On this episode of Crystal Uncorked, I sit down and have a conversation with my mentor, my friend, my old boss, Ted Teele. I started in the independent retail industry in 2010 because of Ted. He sent me an email and he was starting a company called Snap Retail, and they were looking for somebody who knew social media. And I ended up meeting him in Atlanta at America's Mart, and he invited me to join the team. And that was one of the best decisions I have ever made. It was an honor to work with him. I learned so much from him. You're going to see just a tiny bit of his education and knowledge when it comes to business and marketing and digital marketing in this episode, which I know that you're going to just love. But I'm so grateful that we've stayed in contact over these years. He is such a brilliant business mind and is just my friend. And so a little bit more about Ted. You can find him on LinkedIn. We're going to link to that on the show notes. He has over 25 years experience with technology companies. He is an expert in digital marketing, which you're going to hear a little bit of that on this episode today. He is a passionate leader and mentor. I've always felt his heart for building the team and being fair and being, he would always say mutual trust and respect. And I just learned so much from him. And I so know that that's just part of his makeup. He's a Harvard BA and MBA, finishing top 5% in his class, which I'm not surprised. He is such a brilliant business mind. That's what I always say about Ted Teele. He's traveled to 60 countries, just 60, 47 states, and loves yoga. He also lives 1 mile from the ocean, and I get to see his fabulous pictures on Facebook. I'm like so jealous of the time he spends on the beach, even though I'm only 4 miles from my ocean here. I never go. He goes every day, and you can tell it's just therapy for him. So in this episode, we talk about growing a business, like foundationally, what do you need kind of in the beginning? And there are a lot of pieces that you need. We talk high level about why those are so important. We go into how to scale a business. If you are more established and you're ready to take it up a notch or two, you're going to get a lot of value out of the tips today. We talk about risk taking, managing your team. And then Ted has some parting advice at the very end of this episode that I think is so critical to a business's success if you have employees. And I would encourage you to take this advice and use it personally as well, not just professionally. So you gotta watch the whole episode because you need to hear this advice at the end. Also mentioned at the end, Ted works with Kaleidoscope. They help orthodontists with digital marketing. So if you are an orthodontist, have a family or friend member who is, make sure that they check out thekaleidoscope.com. We'll also link to it. All right, let's dive into this episode. Hello, I'm Crystal Vilkaitis. I'm a curious, wine-loving entrepreneur who loves to learn and have open and honest conversations. Join me and my amazing guests as we talk about all sorts of relatable business and life stuff. It's my goal that you'll have fun, learn something new, and get inspired. Wine is not required, but is recommended. This is Crystal Uncorked. Mr. Ted Teele, welcome to Crystal Uncorked. I'm so thrilled you're here.
I'm thrilled to be here, Crystal, and I'm so proud of you, of what you've accomplished. You really are, you've really done a lot of amazing things.
Thank you, Ted. Well, I have learned a lot from you, and I know that our listeners are going to learn some good stuff from you today, too. Before we dive in, Ted and I are drinking coffee today. We are recording a little bit earlier. So cheers. It's coffee with Crystal for this episode.
Yeah. Wine would
it
be
is
more
my
fun.
second. Right. But it is my second cup, and normally I only have one. So we'll see. Maybe we get a little crazy here.
You may get a little crazy.
Yeah. So Ted and I, we know each other many years ago when we worked together at Snap Retail. He founded Snap Retail, reached out to me through somebody he was mentoring. It was a client of mine, and invited me to be on the team. And that's how I got into this independent retail space, like I share all the time. I mean, I never left it, Ted. You invited me in, and I have just stayed. But you have always, I'll never forget, because we worked together for almost 2 years, but I was back in Pittsburgh for a wedding, and you and I got coffee, and you said, "Do you have a dollar?" And I was like, "Yeah." And you're like, "Okay, give me the dollar." So I gave you the dollar, and you're like, "Okay, you just paid your fee. You now can have me as your mentor. Like whatever, you've paid your dues. Now I can help you if you ever have questions." And that really did mean a lot, though, because I have reached out. You have helped me along these years.
Happy to do it,
Yeah. So
I hope it's worth the price you paid anyway.
No, it's way worth. I got a killer deal on that dollar. I have really, really milked that dollar. So Ted, I shared more about you in the intro, but you have built and scaled businesses for many years now, sold multiple businesses. I know you've sold at least one, right? Yeah. Okay.
That's true.
So what would you say, I talk a lot, at least in the social media space, about building a strong foundation to have a superstructure. Like you've got to have foundational pieces to be able to build and sustain, I think, a business. I'm curious what your advice would be for businesses, like foundationally, what do they need to be successful?
Well, it does depend on what industry you're in, but a lot of the scalability is about people and having people that you can scale, and certainly having a market big enough that what you're doing for your current clients, you can do the same thing for a lot more clients or do more for the same clients. So it has to be an industry where there's room to grow. And then the toughest thing for an entrepreneur or any business owner is they tend to do a lot themselves, right? And how do you get to the point where you are able to have people, you're doing things that you used to do yourself? And that is really hard. And a lot of business owners never accomplish that, right? They never get over that hump. And, there's a lot of things about, bringing in the right people, giving them the right long-term incentives, nurturing them, mentoring them, recognizing that, communications is really hard, that, they don't read minds particularly well, so you have to be able to communicate effectively and, not micromanage or allow people to make mistakes, and pick the right industry which supports growth. So
yeah,
that's in a nutshell. And all those are hard. Hiring the right people that are scalable, that are teachable. Somebody like you, that is very teachable and passionate, and all those are important. So it's a combination.
Yeah.
And strategy. You have to have a strategy for growth as well. Right. And that's another tough thing, because sometimes people, in their effort to grow, they spread themselves too thin. It's kind of like the risk game. If you spread your armies too thin, you basically can't defend your territory, and a competitor can come in and take business away.
Right.
So you have to really think about not spreading yourself too thin, but providing services that you can provide to a number of people without changing too much. Like your focus is on independent retail, and so there's a lot of independent retailers, and it takes certain things that are common to those retailers, certain trends. And so if you learn it once, if it works in Peoria, it probably works in Albuquerque, right? And that's a big advantage for growth, right? That you can go and provide service to more people because it's similar to what you're doing now.
Right. Right. I feel like it's this balancing act because you're trying to do so much, to your point, like you're building this business. I feel like as fast as you can, you need team members that can take some of the tasks away from the owner, like you were saying, because it's pretty easy to get caught up in all the to-dos that you don't think about the strategy. Like there's no time for planning the vision and where we're going and how we're going to get there. And I just see a lot of businesses do that, myself included. It's hard to kind of balance, but would you agree? I often hear people say like, hire as soon as you can. Like that's one of the best things that you can start with. Do you agree with that?
Probably not. No. Like, sometimes people, if you're starting something new, they may want to hire a salesperson right away. And, a lot of times it's advantageous for them to learn how to sell their product first. Right. And because it's hard to train somebody if you don't know how to do it yourself. Right. But I think, the most important time for strategy is at the beginning, because the stakes are much lower at the beginning. If you're really thinking about it, sometimes you start down a path that is basically doomed to failure because it's the wrong business, or spending time up front to really come up with, it's like the scientific method. You come up with a hypothesis and then you test it. You go out and test it in the marketplace, and you can do it fairly small when you don't have a lot of overhead right yet. And then you can monitor. Certainly every strategy is going to get tweaked. And it is important, Crystal, for you and for anybody else to, step back and, think about where you want to go based on the new information that you have. What information have you received from customers? What feedback have you gotten? And, how does that modify your strategy? So you're always thinking strategy. You're always trying to pull yourself out of the weeds at least a few hours every week. And, for retailers, your clients, something like this is always a good thing to do, to invest time, and then really try to apply. Like if I'm one of your listeners, you listen to something like this, if you have a small business, take 30 minutes after listening to this recording and write down how it might apply, what is different. And certainly, if you get one idea, that's a significant thing, but up front, you come up with a hypothesis, and you have to recognize that, just like any test in science, your hypothesis may prove wrong, right? And try something else. So don't be too wed to whatever your theory was at the beginning, because the market is going to tell you, right? And, certainly the other challenge at the beginning is whether it's a product line or if it's, you don't have many resources. So you start with something small and you say, if this works, I could try this and try that. So it's very important to spend time thinking of strategy. Yeah. No question about it.
No question.
And be able to articulate it to somebody.
Right.
If you can't, there's so many small business people that really don't have a strategy. Right. They can't articulate it. If your strategy is word of mouth, that's not bad, right? That's a big factor in many companies, but you have to have a lot more than that, right, to grow a business.
Absolutely. Well, and so that's of course foundational, and then it's key to really helping scale the business too, right? So getting really clear early at the beginning of what we're going to do and learning the roles you need to so you can train them, and market testing and making sure that this is a viable business idea or product. And then, you learn through doing, and you're working and building. And then there comes the point where you're ready to scale. And for some, that happens faster than others. I think that for me at Crystal Media, I've had the business for 9 years, and we've grown a little, took a little step back, grew, took a little step back, and grew. We had our best year last year, and we'll have our best year this year, thankfully. But from a
congratulations,
scaling, yay!
Best year last year, yay! In the middle of a pandemic, best year.
I know. I am so incredibly grateful that our retailers reached out to us. I mean, they couldn't stay in contact with their customers, so they needed to use social, and we were there to help support them. So that was a good industry to be in during a pandemic. So I'm grateful. I'm so ready. I feel like I've been kind of ready for the past couple of years to just go further, and that requires a few things. I mean, it requires me to think differently, I feel like. But what would you say, whether it's to me or an established business who's just kind of been growing gradually, if they're ready to scale the business and really go next few levels, what does it take to do that?
Well, a lot has to do with, where your business is right now. So, for example, if you have, 5% of the market and there's no big competitor in your way, and all what you really need to do is make more people aware of who you are, right? That's one thing. And that says, okay, we need to beef up our marketing, right? Or we need to beef up our sales, or we need to beef up both, right? And I always talk about how marketing and sales need to be integrated. But for many small businesses, that's one person. You just bring in a person, or, to take you to the next level in marketing, to do better digital marketing. And certainly that's the space that both of us are in right now, right, is digital marketing. And digital marketing does facilitate scaling the business if you do it well, right? Whether it's social media marketing, digital advertising, which is, it is very complicated, digital advertising. And so you definitely, don't want to just try it yourself. You really want to talk to somebody that knows how to do it. Or email marketing, if you're business to business in particular, email marketing. But there's a lot of different components of digital marketing that could be scaled. And certainly there's physical marketing could be scaled. You could do more trade shows, or you could do whatever, or you could, in a retail model, you open a new store, right? You could do whatever it is you can do. If the market is there, you need to reach it, and you have a concept, then that is usually a matter of scaling up marketing and sales, which isn't trivial, but it's like my last company. When I took over the company, we had 1.5 salespeople. We ended up with 10. Wow. And we were able to scale up pretty dramatically our revenues because of that, and our profits. And when we sold the company, we got a great return for everybody, for the employees, for the shareholders. But the key to that scaling was to scale our marketing and sales. Of course, we kept improving our product as well. You have to keep improving your product. But if we hadn't scaled the marketing and sales, we would not have been able to grow our revenues like we did. Right? So that's one. Now, one of the temptations a lot of people have is they think they kind of get bored of their market they're in now, right? And rather than invest in increasing your market share within that market, which could also be adding extra services that you're providing. So you can look at your customer and say, how much are my customers spending a year on blank, right? It could be on digital marketing, on marketing in general. If you're a retailer, you have to think, how much could they spend, when they come into the business or whatever, that's similar to what you're doing now. All of that is expanding within your current model, right? But there is a temptation sometimes to go, there's a saying, the grass is often greener on the other side of the fence.
Right.
And sometimes you think, well, this other market over here, that looks easy. And you go there, and depending on how far it is from your core, it's very risky, right? Because, it's hard for a small business to be great at one thing. It's close to impossible to be great at two things. Mm-hmm. And I have seen companies lose their way because they tried something that was pretty far away from their core. So you really need to think about that, right? When you think the key to growth is to go into a different market. And one of the questions you can ask yourself is, are the competitors in that different market totally different? Because if they are, you're not necessarily, you have to do a lot of research up front, because sometimes you think, well, my product that I have, it works because I got one company to buy it or in that other space. But a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, and there's a lot of competition or buyer needs. Right. The buyer needs are different in every industry space, and I would imagine, I know it's in retail, that's true too. Like, if you're specializing in one thing, you want to go into this other area with a different buyer, right? If it's the exact same buyer and it's the same kind of thing and it's related, that's one thing. If it's a different buyer, then you may or may not. That's a little riskier. The least risky is to have something that is working well and expand that through marketing and sales, assuming that the market is there, right? But that sometimes, in order to truly realize your potential, you do need to go into markets. And if you go into contiguous markets, it's less risky than if you try to do something dramatically different. Again, I've been involved with a lot of technology companies, and if you try to do something, it's a dramatically different technology, and you try to build that yourself, that's risky. And so you always have to think the exact circumstances that you're in. But for most of the people listening, expanding the core business either by, doing more. If you've got a digital, if you've got an e-commerce website and you want to expand that, well, certainly you could expand it with digital advertising. So you bring in a digital. So it's not just SEO. SEO is important. SEO is really important. But digital advertising can pay off too, right? Because you're, more people that would be, whether if it's a Google ad, what keywords are they typing in, right, or whatever, and Facebook, what kinds of people are you targeting, and all of that. Right. So, for a lot of businesses, expanding could mean just expanding your advertising budget. But again, that's something that you really need to think about and talk to somebody. And there are risks associated with that, because any expert that you hire is going to cost you money. So you really have to think about, can you afford it? Is this the right year to do that? Right. Right. So all of those things go into it. So when you're thinking of scaling up, certainly there's a lot of thought that goes into it. I have a friend that is in a completely different business. And we talked 9 months ago, and the key to her growth, she had two separate markets that she was in, but was to hire a marketing person because she wasn't really doing any marketing. And so she hired a marketing person, and it's been going very well. in terms of, expanding, and you take it to the next step, and again, email marketing for any business to business, that's, a very important component. Webinars, seminars, conferences, trade shows. So you really do have to think, but come up with a strategy. And again, I think the biggest lesson that I want your listeners to get out of it is any strategy is really a test, right? So you come up with a test, hypothesis, you give it a test. What did you learn from it? And modify, right? So it's a provisional strategy. And then what happens is, as the test, you get results. And if the results are paying off, the strategy becomes more solid, right? In the beginning, it's an experiment. Everything's a test in marketing, right? And so you got to think about that. And maybe hiring a salesperson. But you also, if you hire somebody, you have to think about, what is it going to take from me to get that person ramped up and make that commitment? And certainly they have to show that they're capable of ramping up. And I always use the term teachable, that they're teachable, that they have the right level of energy or passion, and that the incentives are aligned. So if it's a salesperson, what kind of variable compensation are you going to give them so that what their behavior matches what the company needs.
Man, Ted, I feel like I could just listen to you for hours. You have so much good advice. I mean, what you shared in just that one answer, there is so much gold there. Just to point out a couple things, like what I love about strategy being a test feels not as like so in stone that this is exactly the way it has to be. And I feel like some businesses don't have the flexibility. It's easier when you're smaller, but to go into it of testing it, then we're really monitoring and tracking to see how things are working, to then decide, is this solid and we move forward, or do we need to tweak it? So that was a big takeaway for me. Also, marketing, like I was just talking to my friend who has a photography business, and her and I were both saying, like, she never markets. We market here at Crystal Media, but we're not great at it. And I think that's one of our number one ways that we could be scaling. I look at our retailers and they're the same way. Often we're like so caught up in the doing that it's not always people's first thought or their strength with marketing, to where these amazing businesses become the best kept secret. Like nobody knows about them.
Right. A lot of times the best product does not win. A product is important, right? But you have a great product that you provide your customers, Crystal, but the product is part of the equation. But then, you do have to market it. And, that movie did a tremendous disservice. And, the saying, if you build it, they will come, whether it's a retailer, whether it's a website, whether it's a, marketing consulting business for small retailers or any other business, you have to go find those customers. I mean, I haven't checked on Google's revenues lately, but I know they're way over 100 billion. And the reason why they got so big is because they're finding people at the exact moment when they're shopping, right? If somebody is looking, I don't know what that thing is behind you. Is it an image of it's an
dog
image
drinking
of
wine.
What is that picture? A dog drinking wine. So if you're in the business of selling pictures of dogs drinking wine, and somebody goes into Google and types pictures of dogs drinking wine, they are a pretty good prospect for your business, right? And obviously there's a lot, within Google, you're paying for keywords and there's all sorts of complexities, but those are people that are actually looking for that. If somebody types that in, which I will probably never do, but maybe a cat drinking wine, or you never know. But in any event, you think about that. If you build it, they will not come unless you market it effectively. And certainly sales, sales and marketing, they go hand in hand depending on the business. But the first thing is to find somebody that's interested in what you have, right? And, so again, digital advertising is big on that. When you do an email market, your email marketing, and again, that's particularly important in the business to business realm. But you're doing email marketing and you get 15% open rate, and you get certain people to click on it or whatever it is. They're interested. Or you can look at their digital body language and you see that somebody opened your email 27 times. Right? That's interesting. That's that's the sort of thing that tells you that person is interested. And the whole purpose of marketing is to find interested people, right? And certainly you got to think, if you're a retail, think about the signage that you have. Think about whether you're advertising at the local high school or whatever it is, but it's all a test. Certainly, everything's a test, and when it comes to things like that, it's not a test that lasts a month. It might be a test that lasts a year, and but you also one of the interesting things that has really come has been reinforced with me in the last year or so is one of the things one needs to do in marketing these days, in digital marketing, is make it easy for the consumer to do what you want them to do, right? So, if you're digital marketing for an orthodontist, which is something that I'm doing now, and an orthodontist, for 500 of them around the country. But if you're digital marketing for an orthodontist, make it easy for consumers to schedule an appointment. If you want to have more appointments, make it easy. Click a button, see the available time, schedule the appointment. Right? You make it easy for consumers to do what you want them to do, and more of them will do it. Right? And that is true for your clients in the retail space. It's true for your business. How do you make it easy? Is it a 15-minute consultation that you're marketing? What are you marketing when you do those emails, or what are you marketing when you do your Google ads? Yeah. Make it easy. And by the way, in the Google ads, or just the ads in general, you definitely don't want to connect back to your website. You want to connect back to a landing page so that the consumer sees content there that's relevant to the ad that you just showed, right? Not sort of general, here's my web page. But anyway, it's another lesson. Make it easy for consumers to do what you want them to do, and more of them will do it.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
I love it, Ted. I mean, so with the ad to the landing page, retailers or business owners listening, think of a funnel. If you're an insider member, we got some training on that. But the top of the funnel, right, might be that ad that takes to the landing page, and then there's further communication from there. And then you confuse, you lose, right? Like if you make it challenging, you lose. If you confuse in your copy, in your marketing copy,
confuse, you
so
lose.
you got to make sure you're really clear. And then I also once heard, best known is better than best. You could be the best at what you do,
best known
is better than best.
I like that.
Yeah. So
you also have to think about what somebody is buying. Right? There was a marketing professor at Harvard Business School that I knew named Ted Levitt. And he talked about when somebody in the industrial space bought a drill press, what they really were buying were holes. That's what they needed, right? And, retail, you're thinking about the image that you're trying to project, or, what is that person? Or if you're buying a car, the brand, it's not just four wheels to get someplace. It's it's a perception, that you're conveying, right? And so you always want to think about that. What are they buying? And when you're talking about your product, you need to make sure to talk about what they really need, not the mechanics of what you're delivering, right? So you really want to think about that as well. So obviously there's a lot here, but the main thing is to think about all these things when you're coming up with a strategy. And it's much easier to grow your existing product or service within your existing space if the market is big enough by adding marketing, right?
Right. Ted, I want to talk a little bit about risk taking because, you mentioned as you scale a business that if you were going, business owners get bored and they try different things and they go into different markets, and doing some of that might not be the best way to scale, and it might in fact be pretty risky. Dustin always says to me, I'm not a big risk taker. I'm not. He's a big risk taker. He'll spend a lot on advertising. He'll do all sorts of stuff, and I kind of play it safe. What do you think is the importance in taking risks in building a business? I just am curious your thoughts on risk taking.
Well, it's impossible to build a business and take no risks, right? And you're always taking the career risk, the opportunity cost of what you could have earned someplace else, right? And but you're also taking a financial risk. One of the things I've seen is when people go after other markets that they don't know, they massively underestimate the risk. And that's because they think, well, if we could just get one customer, two customer, three customer, but it's usually much more risky than that, right? And that's the whole purpose of thinking about it as a test, that you test it. So you take a little risk, you test it. Now, hiring a marketing person is a risk. And so, maybe that's $100,000 risk or, whatever it is, depending on the market you're in, but so the question is, can you take that risk? You have to think before you even start down that path. You also have to think, well, if I do that, this person is going to want to spend some money, right? So you can't, so you want to weigh the risk accurately as best you can at the beginning and test things a little bit. Like you could hire somebody as a consultant. That's a lower risk. And if it works out, they could become full-time. By the way, for many people, it's a lower risk for the consultant too, right? So they're because they don't know how well they're going to work with you or whatever. So, hiring somebody as a consultant and seeing how well you get along, is a littler risk. So you can certainly moderate your risks, and it makes sense to do that because this isn't in order to be an entrepreneur, it's not the equivalent of going to Vegas, mortgaging your house and putting it all on number 12 on the roulette wheel, right? Not a good idea. Although there is a story about Fred Smith, the founder of Federal Express. He couldn't make payroll. So he went to Vegas and he put up, he took a huge risk and he made enough money to make payroll. And of course the rest is history. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that is the story that I've heard. But in general, I'm not a big fan of mortgage your house kind of risks. Right. I would rather take incremental risks, thinking, accurately measuring the risk. And sometimes you don't know, you start down a path, you don't know 100%. So you have to be intellectually honest when you look at the results. Like, what is the market telling you so far? Is this thing going to work? And a lot of times you're extrapolating on a very limited set of data. And you shouldn't, you shouldn't market. If you're going to invest in Google ads, you shouldn't think I'm going to try it for a month, right? That isn't going to work, right? You just know that's throwing the money away. You say, so, okay, I'm going to invest X number of thousands of dollars over 6 months, or I'm going to do this, right? So you make the decision up front, but you still look at it as a test, looking at the results and making sure you have a good way of measuring the results, which is very hard to do in marketing. That's the reality. So you have to look at the interim results as well. Whether you had more appointments, did you get more appointments scheduled, right? And usually all these things typically pay off over longer than 6 months. So that's the tougher thing. You could hire a marketing person tomorrow, Crystal, and you probably wouldn't, after about 6 months, you'd have a gut feeling whether this was a good investment but you probably wouldn't see the returns until it's a year. I mean, that's sad reality, but if you don't do that, then you don't grow.
Right.
At the end of the day, you have to make investments to grow. Right. So,
and we're in this instant gratification world, right? Like, I want to see my results today. I want my answers now. And so it really is the long game versus the short game, where the long game is only a 6 to 12 month. That's not even that long. And of course, depending on industry and budget, things can take longer. But, it really is about being patient and being committed, I think, and consistent to an effort and really measuring.
It. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And knowing, like having a budget, like in your own mind, I'm willing to invest. And I've seen plenty of people that don't grow because they're not willing to invest. Right. I remember, 100 years ago, early in my career, before I met you, I was in this business where, we were selling marketing to contract manufacturers. And there was like this one in Ohio that we went to, and he hadn't grown. And one of his employees left, started a competitor and started marketing, and was like 10 times bigger. And I remember talking to the original founder, and he was looking at that. He said, I just never could take the risk. I never was willing to do that. And he got the reward, right? He didn't sow, so he didn't reap, right? And the other guy was, buying houses in the Virgin Islands and, living the good life because he had invested in both infrastructure and in marketing.
Well, and I think that's where part of the success comes in, is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. Because if he was just not strong in marketing and not willing to invest, could he have had a partner that came on? Could that employee have been a partner instead of spinning off and doing his own thing? Like, just really kind of being self-aware and then surrounding yourself with a good team.
Well, yeah, he could have, the future was not written. That person that left might have stayed if he had cut him in with a little piece of the equity or, who knows. But I do think that knowing your strengths are important, but I also think that it's also important for small business people. Like if you're not good at, finance, if you're not good at looking at the profitability statements, the P&Ls, you should try to get better.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not good at marketing, you should try to learn. And that might be using somebody like you, right, as a consultant, right? But it is, if you're a small business person, you need to at least have some understanding of all the different things that affect whether or not your business will be successful.
Right.
So thinking about how profitability works. And, I've known many small business people that just kind of say, the numbers aren't my thing, and they never try to learn them. And that's a mistake.
Right.
In terms of scaling the business, right? You're not going to be a world-class, financial person, and you certainly don't want to become an accountant. That's somebody else's job. But understanding how the numbers work is important, and understanding marketing a little bit is important. Getting better every day at these things, right? While you're also doing whatever it is that you are good at, right? So
totally.
And certainly bringing people in that you can learn from is important as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Ted, I have 4 rapid fire questions for you as we wrap up this awesome interview that I'm so glad that we got to do. Yeah, it's so fun. My first question is, what is a time that you were proud of yourself professionally or personally?
Well, I'm proud when we sold my last company, Touchdown, because every employee got the biggest paycheck of their lives. And it was something that, we worked for, not just selling the company, but, we had to set things up with stock options and whatnot so that that could happen. And, the company is doing really well now. I stayed a year and the company is continuing to do really well. There's a book called Good to Great, which is a great book for business people.
Yeah.
And they talk about the measure of a great company is one that does well after you leave. Right? And, if it falls apart when you leave, you haven't done your job right? In terms of, making, setting it up so that the company has the right people in place so that you can leave. And, that's what happened at Touchdown. And I'm very proud of that.
What an amazing experience. And I'll never forget, your father, he manage like 4,000 employees and was a very respected leader?
Yeah, my father started a company called Chemonics, CHEMONICS.com. And they're the number one, I believe, provider of foreign aid services around the world for the U.S. government. So they do everything from AIDS eradication and dealing with famine in Africa to healthcare in Bangladesh. And they have people all over the world. And it's about $1 billion or so in revenue. And I'm very proud of it. He died 16 years ago. The company is, he started with one guy on the telephone. Now it's thousands of employees. So he did very well, right? And I'm proud of him.
Yeah. I always remember that. And working with you at Snap Retail, I just always felt that desire to take care of the team and really build something we can all be a part of. And so, which I just loved and try to be like as well. That was very impactful working with you through that.
Well, I learned that from my dad. He always put the company above himself.
Yeah.
And, people work for him for 30 years, right? So.
Right. Love it. Okay, next rapid fire question. What social media site do you use the most?
It's probably Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn all the time. And certainly personally, but also professionally.
Yeah.
In terms of the professional with Facebook and Instagram are just people that, I built a good relationship with that, has blended into the personal.
Totally. Yeah. That's a pure curiosity.
I know you were the queen of Twitter. I remember one time you were ranked like number 10 or something ahead of Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
And
good memory.
Yeah,
Me and Shaquille O'Neal were in a magazine together.
And Twitter is important because for SEO purposes,
right?
Google indexes Twitter and not Facebook and Instagram. I think they don't like Facebook and Instagram as much. I guess I don't know why,
right?
But they do index Twitter, so it's good to in the B2B space to be posting to Twitter.
Right. What have you listened to a podcast or read a book in the past 30 days that you would recommend?
The thing I would recommend that, there's something called, because, I certainly listen to my industry podcast and general podcasts, but there's something called Blinkist. Do you know Blinkist?
Oh, no. I feel like I've heard about this, but I'm not sure what it is.
Or Blinkist. My daughter Emily got it for me for Christmas, I think, a subscription, or my birthday. And basically they take books and they give you the summary of the book in 15 minutes.
Oh.
And they're called blinks, and they're like, they'll take a book and make 8 or 9 blinks. And certainly if you had time to read business books or even novels, like, there was a book about Robert Iger's why he was able to just transform Disney.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure I would learn more if I took the 20 hours or 25 hours to read the book. But the 15-minute summary was pretty helpful. And, whether it's, Michelle Obama's book in 15 minutes or, books on business topics or, there was a whole bunch on multiple books on the importance of storytelling in business, or storytelling in leadership, where explaining a policy by telling a story and how that's effective. But all of those were just little 15-minute blinks I listened to. So I got the essence of the book quickly.
Yeah.
And you can always listen to it again if you didn't, right?
I'm going to be...
So I would recommend that.
Yeah, right? I'm going to be...
It's an app.
Okay.
I'll get the name right here for you.
Blinkist. And we'll confirm too. We'll look it up.
Blinkist.
I'm going to be addicted to that. I love...
Blinkist. No L.
Okay.
BIL.
Love it.
INKIST.
Love it. Fun fact about Robert Iger: when his book came out, I was at the Ellen show in the audience, and he was one of the guests, and we all got a copy of his book. I wish it was signed, but I haven't read it yet. But I'm going to probably listen to it on Blinkist.
Listen to the Blink.
I know.
Yeah, time is so precious that, most of us don't have a time to read many books, so this is a way to extract the wisdom from the books.
Totally. Ted, do you have any parting advice for our audience as we sign off here?
Well, I think that you always want to think about your business, be intellectually honest. And I guess in terms of when you do have employees, try not to be defensive when they have ideas. Because if you create an environment where people believe they can share their ideas with you, even whether or not you eventually implement them, but if they believe that you will share your ideas or you will listen to them, they'll be happier, but the company will be stronger. And there are so many small businesses that are not run that way. There's so many small businesses where if a team member makes a suggestion that the owner or the manager reacts defensively or explains why they are doing what they are doing. And no matter what, you should just let it come in. Just let it come in and reflect on it and give feedback the next day or a reaction the next day. But that is if you want to scale and it involves people, the single biggest weakness that I see in most small business owners is the fact they react defensively when they get suggestions.
Beautifully said. Excellent advice, Ted. For anybody, now you're obviously niche like I am too. You work with orthodontists at Kaleidoscope. So if anybody is an orthodontist, tell them where they can check you out.
Well, it's thekaleidoscope.com. And feel free to find me on LinkedIn. You can see my name right there, Ted Teele. Find me on LinkedIn. But yes, right now we're focused, we're a complete digital marketing company for orthodontists. And it's really fascinating to me to learn because it's all about local marketing. And in their case, putting what I say butts in the seats, people in the seats for consultations, because it's usually free. Consultations are usually free. And, before you decide whether you want to get braces or aligners. So we got to get good qualified people into the seats, and marketing is critical for that. So, and I'm having a blast doing it. And it's great talking to you, Crystal. Again, I'll end where I started. I'm very proud of the fact that you've had your business for 9 years and you had your best year ever in 2020.
Well, Ted, I mean, I learn from the best honest. You are one of those people. I really learned so much when we worked together and continue to. And I thank you for your support and inspiration of just being an awesome leader and entrepreneur. This means the world to me that you spent the past hour with me. Thank you so much. We will link to Ted's information. Go check him out. Ted, thank you so much for your time.
You are very
One
welcome.
last cheers. And everybody, I will see you on the next CU. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening. Are you on Instagram? I'd love to see pictures of you listening to the show, a screenshot of your favorite episode, and/or your favorite wines. Share them with me. Just follow and tag @Crystal Uncorked. I can't wait to see you there. All right, I'll see you on the next CU.